Greetings, friends, crew member of our beloved, polluted, and unique spacecraft, which, since the last time we met, has taken another turn about its imaginary axis and, of course, continues creative events in full development. Of course, if I'm not standing up with a map in my background, the background that is the map of our dear, polluted, and unique spacecraft. And this is because we have a guest, and it is, of course, a very important guest. With us, we have General Jesus Barrios. He has a BS in Sciences and Military Arts of the Military Academy of Venezuela. He has a Master in Philosophy of War. He's a specialist in war philosophy. He's an academic researcher. And he wrote compilation of doctrine document of the United States. I will show you how far the information of this book goes. This is a beautiful book that should be the Bible for all of us who are part of this international ideas. He has also written different papers about the United States and the militarization. He has been granted Aníbal Nassau Prize. He also was awarded in 2012 with this award for alternate paradigms in his work, the strategies and operations that have been deployed in real time in military maneuvers on 2012, the strategy and operation. Officer of Intelligence with a course of intelligence in Cuba. He is the manager of the counterintelligence. He is also a trainer for military chess, and he is also director of the Armed Forces for Strategy. He is the former director of the School of Strategy and Counterintelligence of the Armed Forces of Venezuela. He is an international observer in the Inter-American War Game in the Republic of Colombia 2012, representative for Venezuela in UNICEF, in the seminar about strategic intelligence in Buenos Aires, Argentina, representative for Venezuela to abolish international bases in Guantanamo, Cuba. So this is a very important resume, and welcome, General. All the topics that are related to your long and important resume can be seen every day because they are part of the current events of our life. And as I often, maybe obsessively, say about the 9 bases of the United States in the Republic of Colombia, I would like to say, how can we understand this if we have the greatest reservoir of oil just 4 or 5 days from Texas, while the Persian Gulf is 40 or 45 days away, and we have not accepted to drop our trousers, not with the bases, nor with the intervention that was going to take place here. So what is our stage for operations? Walter, good evening. First of all, thank you very much for the invite to your strategic program, and I would also like to greet you from the line of command of the Bolivarian Army with Nicolás Maduro Moro, also Vladimir Padrino Lopez, and the Vice President of Power and Peace and the Minister of Defense, who today is visiting Russia in the Forum of Security, and particularly from our commander in the Army, Major General Jesus Juárez Churio, also from the state of the Bolivarian Venezuelan Army. We are very honored of seeing all the different people who are part of the audience today, and with no further ado, because those of us who have been a part of military training, we know when we need to start speaking about important things. Now, we're going through very difficult moments. Which one do you think is the most difficult one? Beyond the maniac that governs the White House, who's continually speaking about danger, but there's a legal framework for the operation. Well, the word, the maniac, is my word, not your word, of course. The main topic, the main concern that I have, and I will discuss today, are the doctrine documents that during this 2-year investigation I carried out, I believe are the main documents of the United States that should be learned for international analysis. This means the first document, which is the report
General Vincent Stewart,
of Vincent Stewart, who's the Officer of Intelligence of the United States, on February, when the executive order or the decree for emergency in Venezuela was provided on March. So we can understand that they have waited for the report of the environment to the global threats and then providing the executive order. The second document that contemplates the book I wrote is the strategy for security of the nation. The third document shown in the book is the charter that is before the executive order. This is a charter that it's a bit difficult to locate, and during my investigation while I was researching, not a lot of people knew about this charter as part of the executive order. The most important document of the book is the executive order or emergency decree. That's why the book is important, because in 2016 we were once again threatened by a decree of a threat, and then again in 2017, and recently with the new president of the States, we are a threat to them. The fifth document that can be seen in the book is a document called the position of the Meridional Command, which is a yearly document of the South Command that involves all the countries that he's concerned about in the region in order to put together this document. The explanation for the first document, the report about the environment to global threats, there we speak about terrorism. It speaks about Asia as well as Latin America. And there's a paragraph in this report exclusively about Venezuela. In that paragraph about Venezuela, I was concerned because twice they anticipate internal conflicts from the students and the politicians that are going to take place here in Venezuela. So we could ask our audience how do they know that these events were going to take place internally from the political aspect as well as the students. This is the first document of February, and the executive order came in March. So we are concerned right now, and it seems to be a little bit colloquial. However, it is very difficult. They made decisions, and things happened here. Please emphasize this, General, because people are just concerned about queuing in a moment of scarcity that has been fabricated. When they overthrew agenda, they got rid of different topics first. The same thing is happening here. The style of the last generation of the strategy to get rid and overthrow governments. Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. Before an intervention, as we have seen throughout history, a given scenario is prepared internationally. I believe that these documents are the preparation for any action, whether a diplomatic international action, in this case against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Now, about the case of the charter that is before the executive order. Here, President Barack Obama presents the President of the Congress, John McCain, the executive order, and establishes three particular aspects. First, they are granted the capacity of applying the executive order to the Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of State only. Second, speaks about the executive order, which is for workers and leaders that are present and old, and former leaders, but we don't know how long ago they have worked. Maybe we're speaking about 10, 20, 30 years. And after that, they add the executive order. It is important from this executive order, which is still in force, It is divided into sections. I would recommend section 1, 6, 8, and 11. Section 1, when contrasted with the Charter, even though the President in the Charter states that the will is given to the Secretary of the Treasury and Secretary of State, in the Executive Order, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of the Treasury allow any public worker to apply executive orders. So then we can ask, where do we have public workers in the States? Well, basically all around the world. So every worker around the world can apply this executive order. In this executive order, they also create a consolidation of terms. It is a state for them, a state for us, a nation for them, a nation for us, but they include the Central Bank of Venezuela within the government. So when you analyze the document, we can believe or understand that the executive order would be for the funds of the Central Bank of Venezuela. And last, the executive order presents its term, and we could analyze the last countries where this has been applied previously to a military intervention with executive order, and this document, this charter, then becomes a military operation. So please, tell us a bit about history, because people tend to forget about events that just happen in front of us, for instance, the Caribbean. Well, during the last years, we could name countries that have been applied with executive orders before a military intervention. So we should look at ourselves in this mirror. Yes, that would be the learning from how interesting are these documents of executive order or state of emergency. In 1983, there was an intervention in Grenada. In 1985, an intervention in Nicaragua. 1989, regardless, they had to grant the Panama Canal to the country. They involved the president in problems related to drug trafficking, and they intervened in the country with a military operation called FERCAS, or Causa Justa in Spanish. So from an executive order with a charter, then they start with a military execution. In 2001, also with the term terrorism, with this excuse in Afghanistan, they applied an executive order. And through the operation Long-Lasting Freedom, Libertad Duradera, they created a military operation in Afghanistan, and there are still troops in Afghanistan today. In the year 2003, they also applied an executive order against Iraq, and they carried out the military operation Freedom of Iraq. With Iraq, of course, there is a paper called The Bad Guys of Iraq. And this book is about two characters, a scientist who's given the order to write a report where he must explain that there are mass destruction weapons, regardless of the fact that the main workers, the main servants of the United Nations were never able to get evidence about these mass destruction weapons. And the journalist created this report without the verification it required. So the book, The Bad Guys of Iraq, then state that the scientist kills himself and the journalist dies in a car accident. At the end of this book, The Bad Guys in Iraq, Prime Minister Tony Blair takes all the responsibility from this, but he states, whatever happened, the world is better without Saddam Hussein. So, whatever they had to do, they will do it. In 2011, we had the executive order to Libya, regardless of the fact that Libya had the greatest GDP of the region, and they also carried out a military operation in Libya. And we can see that before the operation, there was a resolution 1973, which is the resolution for the airspace over the capital of Libya, which then was extended even more. So these are steps that are taken until they can start with the military operation. And in 2012, as one of the last countries, we have the case of the executive order to Yemen. The military operation takes place in Yemen, and the executive order of Yemen has a particularity. It establishes the application of the executive order because the government violates the agreement between the government and the opposition that was trying to get a transition. So this is nothing but internal policy of the country, of course, and it is really important to study all these executive orders and how, after being nothing but a charter, a piece of paper, they became a military operation. I had the chance of visiting Gaddafi's Libya. I had dinner in the palace, and Gaddafi was a man of the tribes, and he had graduated from the best military universities of Europe. And people who needed something just came and talked to him as if he was their father, and they always got what they wanted. And the Iraq of Saddam Hussein worked like clockwork. I always say this: the Shiites and the Shiites and the Sunnis, and now those who are fighting for different flags have their own legislation, their own media, and their own culture, and no one bothered them. But then they destroy the map of the Middle East, for the benefit of whom? Of the United States, of course, and their ally, Israel, maybe. They call this sector the axis of evil. There's a very important map, which is the arch of instability. These are the countries that have been in conflict, the countries that are now in conflict, but they have already underlined in the map the countries that will be in conflict in the future. So they predict the future, but they also are the ones in charge of making it come true. And when we speak about perspectives in this axis of evil, there's an author called McLennan. He has studied this axis of evil, and he speaks about chaos and what's going to happen later. And he speaks about an enemy without a face and a war without a name. This is what he expects to happen on Earth. The next document, which is the final document of the book, it's a very important document carried out by the commander. It's a yearly document, and like the President of the United States, he has a speech annually, and they call this the speech of the State of Union, where probably he will announce what he is going to do during that year. The commander of the South Command also studies his area, and this is called the position of the South Command. Now I would like to use the map. This is the pointer. This is a military pointer. You are most likely familiar with it. In the so-called position of the Southern Command document, they speak about 4 countries. They speak about Russia, China, Iran, and Venezuela. They are the main countries that are part of this document about the position of the Southern Command. These are the countries that the region is concerned about, of the Southern Command, and well, this was also called the South Command, and then China and Russia, which are great powers, are not dividing the world into great commands, but the United States have divided the world in 6 big commands. The Southern Command is for Central, South America, and the Caribbean. And the document is about the concern of the countries that are beyond the Southern Command over the Latin American region. In this document, the commander shows that he is concerned about the presence of Russia in the region. He expressed that Russia, due to their weapon systems, so he uses the term that they have flirted with Cuba. Russia has flirted as well as other countries using their weapon systems. This is the main concern of Russia in the region. So it's indiscriminate destruction, but they just call it collateral damage. And they should call the attention of those Venezuelans who, due to some reason, have called for an intervention in Venezuela with the so-called humanitarian aid. I have some information here. We are making people sick, then we send them a hospital, but if we don't like it, then we're going to destroy the hospital too. In 2016, the first humanitarian summit took place in Turkey, and the Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs presented some very important figures. He said that 218 million people as of today are affected by natural disasters, emphasizing on the phrase natural disasters as a term for humanitarian crisis. And then 60 million people, including children, have been forced to abandon by force due to armed conflicts their homes, and highlighting the term armed conflicts. Another diplomat, I'm speaking about O'Brien, who comes from Great Britain, and he is the manager of the Secretary of Hemisphere Issues. He speaks about this and says that we are undergoing a moment that is critical, that is even worse than World War II. We should not be speaking about humanitarian crisis. For them, they happen at the same time in their humanitarian crisis. And World War II was the most dramatic event that's ever happened in history. And we use this to justify what? Well, they have an intention, and they worked with humanitarian aid over Venezuela. But the United Nations themselves, with the Secretary of Humanitarian Affairs, mentions three things. First, humanitarian aid is directed to countries facing an armed conflict, where people are displaced due to armed conflicts, or to countries that are suffering due to natural disasters. This report, this activity, and this point of view they have already speaks about the 15 main countries that for 2018 will have humanitarian crisis. So this survey was already carried out. So we already know where crises are going to take place. So they're requesting with the United Nations, with the General Secretary of International Affairs, are requesting $2,200 billion to help 91 million people. And when providing assistance to 91 million people, they are still not complying, and they are leaving 41 million people behind. What are the countries, Walter? Well, I brought the numbers to showcase what we are speaking about our humanitarian crisis and what they want to say about Venezuela. There's not a particular order, but first we have Afghanistan, 7.5 million people who are facing a situation of crisis in Afghanistan. Ethiopia, this is for 2018. Ethiopia, 7.1 million people who are facing problems of droughts. Iraq, 11 million people need some type of aid. Libya, 180,000 people are displaced within the country itself. In Mali, Islamic groups have increased. In Chad, 4.5 million people for lack of food security. 500,000 children suffer of acute malnutrition, and then other countries have children living in terrible conditions, in shelters that are completely improvised. So the organizations of the states, together with the Secretary of Hemispheric Affairs, identifies that for a country to be determined as a humanitarian crisis, first, it must have three things. First, affected by armed conflicts, so displacement of people, forced displacement due to armed conflicts, displacement of people due to natural disasters, and under duress. So, in our region, we can say that the displacements that are taking place in the Latin American region are because people want to. And back to what you said about our neighboring country, the media have stated that thousands of people have been displaced from Venezuela to other American countries. And why do we have 6 million Colombians here?
No, la cifra más conservadora dice 5
That's a conservative number, 5.6 million people from Venezuela, from Colombia and Venezuela. If we use the survey with the terms of the United Nations, as reference the Secretary of Brian for Hemispheric Affairs, the number of people, or the people that have individually been displaced from Venezuela, have done so voluntarily. It would be important to study and understand if the citizens of Colombia that today are living in Colombia were moving due to their own will or due to armed conflicts. Well, that was usually the reason they had. Here in Colombia, we have nothing to do, we don't have food, so we go to Venezuela and they open the doors. And there's a study that should be carried out because they even want to bring the Venezuelans migrate and use the term refugees when the term refugees implies that the mass of people or the groups of people must justify that they are being somehow prosecuted. And this is, of course, against the international idea that Venezuela is facing a different crisis. An economic refugee is different than a political refugee. And this is usually a nuance that the commons don't understand. What is our current situation? What's the worst hypothesis? Can we say it today? If not, well, my question has been taken back. Well, without a doubt, from the internal point of view, the lack of stability has been brought against us. We have an internal political instability as well as actions of social instability and actions to destabilize our economy and actions to destabilize our people psychologically. Professor Goslan speaks about the new techniques for psychosocial fights to internally bring a country to what is called the social turbulence. And from the international point of view, they've done everything they have been able to discredit our country internationally, and most likely isolated internationally too. But there's a very important term, Walter, and I want to speak about this, which is imperialism, because very often, from my point of view, we've used the term imperialism very lightly, and we haven't contrasted with the term hegemony. The term hegemony, surrounding this term, there are underlying terms that state that other countries acknowledge a country for this country to be the leader because this country is capable in a given area. For instance, China is acknowledged by the rest of the countries for their great capacity of technology and IT. So it becomes a hegemony in that field. Russia is acknowledged worldwide for the system of weapons by the different countries, by different states and nations. And then it becomes a leading country due to the capacity they have for their weapons. When we speak about imperialism, then this is not acknowledged by the rest of the countries. Imperialism imposes force. By the different interventions they use this. But Walter, the term imperialism can be brought to justice, and we can speak that this is a historic moment, and we can also contrast this with the Roman Empire. It was before imperialism. There was initially in the States the first historic moment was colonialism in the 1600s, where the 13 colonies belonged initially to Britain, the first 13 colonies. So this was one of the first moments they had, colonialism.
Superado en el año 1800,
in the 1800s, colonialism became extensionism, and this can be based on the words of Professor García Iturbe in his work, United States from the Roots, and explains how the United States expanded and how they acquired of the three initial colonies, how the United States grew and acquired and buying as well New Mexico and Alaska. Also, and they grew with the so-called extensionism. After the extension, then interventionism took place. And interventionism is supported by the words of Professor Atilio Borón with his work, The Dark Side of the Empire. And he has a chronological list starting in 1923 of all the countries with an intervention in our region. So we start with the moment of colonialism, the moment of extensionism, the moment of interventionism, and then after interventionism, imperialism came as the term. And imperialism came in a very important time. And here we can have a stop and bring the information of Noam Chomsky, an American. And Noam Chomsky states that the United States must be part of hegemony, because if not, they will not survive. So that's why I showed why hegemony is important as a word, because the United States must be a hegemony and acknowledged by the rest of the countries in order to survive. After the term imperialism, Professor Juan Bosch says that pentagonism is beyond imperialism. Juan Bosch is South American. I had the honor of being at his home and listened to him. He's a great thinker of the great nation, and he says that that's a substitute of imperialism. But Chomsky himself, since 2014, has been working with two terms for the United States. So the United States, since 2014, are facing two stages that are not imperialism. Noam Chomsky says that the United States today face exceptionalism and isolationism. So we can interpret this as, if in a given moment, as stated by someone who knows almost everything about the United States, at some point the United States can be diplomatically isolated, economically isolated too, as stated by Chomsky. So we should not speak lightly about what imperialism is, because the empire, as it happened with the Roman Empire, dies eventually. So it would be important to continue with our research about the term imperialism. Well, Walter, my final message would be that regardless of being men and women of weapons, we should seek peace always. However, it is important to study the threats, to have an appreciation of these threats, and follow up all these documents from the main power, because these documents, as it has been stated and shown by history, are the previous documents to a possible intervention. Once again, remember what you've heard many times in Dossier. When we speak about a clear and present danger, this is a code to have the free hands for a war. So that's a code in the States. And, well, whatever you may be, on the other side of the screen, sadly, we have concluded our program. I would like to have more time to speak about this, but we will be back, and we will continue to speak about this, because si dispatchen para bellum, if you want peace, be prepared for war. Let us act. We are big enough to do so. We are surrounded by enemies. You know who the traitors are, because I've said this ad nauseum in the show, and I take responsibility over this. So we don't want neighbors like this. But imperialism, of course, wants to have them for their own work. Thank you, General. And if I may, I will now end the show, whatever you may be, on the other side of the screen. Thank you for allowing us to be there with you. From Studio 3 of Venezuela Televisión, the pioneering channel of Venezuelan TV, heir of TVN5 in Cerro Marin, where I used the first civilian satellite in 1970. Here I conclude with Dossier. I would like to deeply thank all the people of the great nation of Latin America and the Caribbean who have overwhelmed us with their messages. I cannot answer all of them, but I promise that I will continue reading them. This book should be always part of your library. I've shown it here. Let me show you this again. Please, a full close-up. Director, please zoom in. This is a crucial book. We need to keep this in mind. This is a compilation of doctrine documents of the United States. And here we have a great deal of the formula that we might be awaiting, and it should not surprise us. Thank you, General. Director, the floor is all yours.